Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon, so a massive shout of appreciation to Maris, Harry Blade, Mobile Mech 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Chris Hillman, NA Literalist, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As the Earth, Nathan Thompson, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Missouri Bear, Henrik86, Liam Nedrick, Owen Jennisons, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Nye Bai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, Felix Hung, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, David Wade Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. I'm going to raise the mic on whoever is in Discord so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show. Well, there's nobody in the Discord server yet.
Nope, Dead's still there.
What, in, no, he's not. I can't see him.
No, Dead's still, no one's there.
I noticed Spurs uses this server now. It's got Under No Pressure Live, Chemo's Under Pressure chat room. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, but I've never been in his room though.
No, me neither, but I didn't know which server he used. I don't think he used this server typically. I don't know which server he was using, but obviously he's using this one now. Betty's server.
Is he still trying to convert the Globers?
I would assume he's still on his flat earth evangelism vibe, yeah. I don't think that'll change.
Yeah, he's got quite a passion for the psychological aspect of it.
I don't know, it just strikes me as insecurity. It's like you need everyone else around you to see things the way you see it. It's like, why? Just go on with it, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, everybody makes their own choices. I mean, it's still not going to change reality. All that I know for me, what reality is.
Hold on a second, but isn't it reality, Nathan?
Isn't what reality, Neil?
Flat Earth. Is it not a reality of what we were told and what we were taught?
Yeah.
It's not what we're bringing forth reality. So I don't know, I think it goes a little too far. I agree with you there.
But you're saying, well, an adherence to the obvious and observable nature of reality is perfectly acceptable. But if other people do not want to adhere to the obvious and observable nature of reality because they have a belief, I think you're taking umbrage with the word belief when I said, well, you know, implying that everything I have as a description of the world I'm living in is also a belief, right, Neil? Is that what you're objecting to?
Well, I'm saying we believe we know we have the truth, right? The Earth is obviously and observably flat. It's not a spinning water ball like we were taught. So I think that's the part that gets people in that mindset where they have to convert everybody, where this is the truth, you must see it. I mean, I don't. Here's the information, take it or leave it.
Yeah, exactly. Take it or leave it. You know, you don't have to like it.
Good morning. Check.
More than 10.
Thank you.
Hey, Tent, how's it going?
Good, good.
I know you don't like sports, Nathan, but did anybody see that Dak Prescott injury yesterday?
I like sports and I didn't watch it, but I heard about it.
Oh, it was gruesome on TV. I mean, you seen his foot totally twisted the opposite way. Oh,
Like the Joe
gosh.
Theismann, like the old Joe Theismann with the Redskins.
Yeah, basically that was it. But a little low, his ankle was totally. I thought his shoe had come off and it was facing the wrong way. But he knew it immediately. He was actually trying to snap it back in place, but the bone was actually out.
So
Yep.
it was an actual force that broke his bone?
It's called the
it was-
Force of the
defensive
New York
lineman.
Giant coming down.
We all
The
scrambled to think of a
defensive
joke.
lineman.
And then
So
there was
what's new?
too much.
I came in on something about obviously and observably nature of our reality.
Not a belief. Measured.
Trying to
Oh.
figure out.
What are you trying to figure out?
Trying to figure out why Spurs wants to convert the world.
It's just nature, that's all. When he feels he has good news for people, he wants to share it. It's my nature too, but I know I can't control a person's decision. So all you could do is give your best presentation, and that's as much as a human can do.
No. But he's like, you must. His attitude is like, you must believe. Come on, look at how he gets on Nathan sometimes.
Well,
But they're in pain, Nathan.
if it's an encouragement to steer someone the right way, I don't have a problem with it. But if it's coming across as a force or someone, if it's not the other person's decision, it's not going to work anyway because it's false. It's the other person didn't want to do it to begin with. You just talk them into it. So it doesn't make any sense.
But don't you agree when you present the information to them? I mean, there's only so many times you could do it. Let's take Ed, for instance, Ed Freeze or Rumpus or Zanuck. I mean, you begin to beat your head against the wall. Here's the information that we have. Here's your
No,
decision.
I disagree. Those are poor comparisons for this. If it's somebody new, somebody who's not a troll, then that is more of a, how can I put it, proper way of describing a situation. When it's these trolls, they're not this stupid. They know they're on the losing end of an argument. They're just here to troll.
But I've seen
Wasting
guys
your
just
time
like
with them.
that. I've seen guys just come into the arena.
Who just
present
comes
them with
into
the
the arena?
information, and they act the same way.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about the 24/7 arena with Mickey?
Could be on the street. You bring them
Well,
into
you
this
said the
arena.
arena. What? Oh,
The
this
arena,
arena.
the
I
Flat
thought you
Earth
meant
arena.
Yeah, well, no one just comes into the Flat Earth arena. They're either shocked by it because they're hearing it for the first time, or they've got a little background for it. Look, I had a big get together here on the property, and one of the spouses of one of the people coming said, "Please, whatever you do, don't bring up Flat Earth." And I think they were. And I think you got to hear the whole story. You got to hear the whole story. So I said, "What makes you think I was going to bring it up?" Well, because her husband and others in her family know where I stand on it, and they don't ever want to discuss it with me, but they don't want me to bring it up. But it's like we discussed it one time, and that's it. But obviously, they were, not liking it or thinking I'm crazy, which I already know that's what they think. So it's like, hey, this is a party for some other event, and if you could do me a favor, just don't bring it up. I go, first of all, I already know how they feel. I would never bring it up again because I don't push a rope. If they want to have a discussion, they can bring it up, but I'm not going to bring it up because I already know how they feel. So, 38, 40 people were here, and It was fine. It was a good event. No reason to bring it up. No one wants to talk about it. Why should I talk about it?
Sort of like when I first got saved. People used to tell me, please, whatever you do, just don't bring up Jesus at this party.
Yeah, it was the same for me.
Oh,
it's like when you're on fire
happens.
in the beginning. Yeah, when you're on fire in the beginning, you just want to shout it everywhere.
Yeah, they don't want to hear it. So then fine, you won't hear it. If you don't want to hear it, then you won't hear it. It's real simple. What did Jesus say? When you go into the towns and they won't greet you and accept you in my name, shake the dust off your feet and go somewhere else. It's right there. You don't force it on people.
Now, there might be a tipping point. I know I often argue for the opposite side of this that I'm about to put forward, but if you're going to take Spurs' view, which is what we discussed, which is that we're on the cusp of a tipping point and a paradigm change, and everyone's going to see things differently pretty soon. Well, if it's ridiculed, violently opposed, and then accepted as obvious, which is generally the order of these things, right? Well, then you need enough people to be aware of it at a level that they sit into one of those two categories. Let's say it's in this example with you and your work as vehemently or violently opposed. Well, because they're at least a conscious level aware of it, if the news was to say tomorrow, yeah, it's flat, they would just instinctively accept it as obvious because they were told by the news that it was the case and they were already aware of it. So they just go, yeah, well, I already knew that. Because it's acceptable then. But you need them to be aware because otherwise it's just a shock if the news suddenly says, well, it's flat, we were lying all along, or, you know, NASA's going to be disbanded because it's a massive hoax, or whatever. You know, I don't know how they'd approach that. That's not part of my scenario. I don't know how to explain that bit away. But I'm just saying, if the news became commonplace for whatever reason, through whatever means, then you'd need enough people to be aware of it, even if they were violently against it or vehemently against it at that particular stage. So if you are of that opinion that there's, you know, so many of the kids that are eventually going to replace the generation, the boomers are going to go, the kids will replace them, and flat Earth will reign supreme, well, then there's got to be a point where the public, the majority of people, can be told it without it being a total shock to them. So that might be the process we're in now, softening them up, basically. And normally I just say, no, we're just here to keep it ridiculed. But, you know, that's just the opposite side of that particular coin.
Well, look what they're doing with whole alien stuff. It's out there from all different sources, different countries, sightings here, sightings there. And then all of a sudden the Pope gets up and says, well, I'll baptize the aliens. Like, what? So they're already getting everyone prepared for some kind of event that involves aliens. It's pretty obvious because the whole world's talking about it. And so everyone's, whether they believe it or not, they're saying, well, I heard the Pope say he was going to baptize aliens.
Yeah, well, Project Bluebeam has been going on for years and years.
Hold on. Well, there is the aliens that were in that movie by Shyamalan, Signs, then he's going to kill them because they're allergic to water.
Yeah, they're setting up for some kind of hocus pocus magic trick on the whole world, and it's going to involve aliens. It's pretty obvious.
You can't have aliens. You can't have aliens. She just that.
Well, we know they're not aliens. They're going to be demons posing as aliens, but we know they're not aliens.
Yep. Us that's got
alien to me.
Us that's got thinking capabilities.
But it's just too much out there, you know. It's like you can have a talk about people and aliens, no one gets upset. You bring up flat Earth, oh.
I saw an interesting chat the other day about someone talking about conspiracy theories and how its theory was stuck to the end of conspiracies to make it look bad, because conspiracy isn't actually theories, it's facts that just debunk, how can I say, people's narratives.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually quite interesting if you look at it that way.
Claimed to be a CIA term.
Well, that works.
Conspiracy theorist. It's supposed to be an engineered, manufactured term to begin with, for exactly the reasons you've given to pour scorn and ridicule on anybody they associate with that title. Talking about 9/11, conspiracy theorist, obviously to be ignored.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's a good, really funny movie out there called Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson, and you can't believe all the imagery involved in that movie.
Great movie.
He spits a fair bit of truth in it as well. You know, he talks about fluoride
Yes.
and various other things in there, and for the same reasons. You know, he's a nutter. Let the public know. It's just another piece of propaganda. What's a conspiracy theorist? Well, it's a guy with OCD and a very messy apartment who talks a lot of nonsense non-stop and is a taxi driver. So all negative stereotypes. That's what a conspiracy theorist is. Just in case you didn't know, member of the public, here's what a conspiracy theorist is.
Oh, so that's why they all say we're stupid.
Right.
Is that why they all say we're stupid, even though we teach them about their own religion and about physics and about reality?
Yeah. Like on Friday, we had Ed demanding that I square the circle of the natural law violation that is the heliocentric model in terms of a sky vacuum with gas not filling it. He's like, well, how do you explain it in our model? It's like, you can't. But they want us, they're appealing to us to right a wrong in their own model. Now, typically, I wouldn't actually trim out sections of video with Ed in because he's a useless twat. But in this particular instance, he is, you know, he's just not very, generally speaking, most of the arguments with Ed aren't very good.
It's funny the way you said it.
Well, he is, it's just that the arguments aren't very good with him. You know, they go nowhere, they go around in circles. But in that particular instance, you've got him arguing for, quote, the heliocentric model, and he's demanding that I justify it within the parameters of his model. Well, that's quite useful to juxtapose against reality, which is exactly how the conversation went. Well, I'm like, when I listened to it back this morning, I thought, hang on a second, this is literally globe Earth model versus reality. Well, that's actually a useful discussion to trim out, so I'll publish it later, but yeah, I'm going to use that bit. I don't, like I say, like using bits with Ed in, but I will on this occasion.
Yeah, that's why I was trying. That's why I was trying
let me
to
get the laugh out, man.
You were desperately trying to get words in. I was getting increasingly stroppy with your flatsoid because you were desperately over his answers.
That's fine.
You were fundy muting his answers by going, I want to get a question, I want to get a question in, I want to get a question in. What did you want
to get a laugh in?
Hold on, Ted.
Sorry, Flats. I'm sorry, Flats. I just got to get a laugh
fine.
in. It's so funny right now. Okay, go ahead, Flats.
No, because I'm never sure if anybody's actually can hear me or not. But
yeah, we can.
Anyway, that's how I was trying to push with him ideal gas law, because I wanted to get it to a point, because he kept going in circles and circles and circles. But
He
yeah,
tried that, and he just said no.
he just dug his own hole.
He did hear you say that. He said he's talking about ideal gas law, and he just said no. And he wasn't. He's talking about atmospheric law.
First of all, I heard Rumpus was feeding him.
You heard Rumpus feeding him?
I heard Rumpus was feeding him that day. That's correct.
He did about as well as Rumpus did.
That makes it even more sad.
No, Brian said, hang on. I heard Brian say that he thinks Rumpus was helping them out. But how would you prove that?
Yeah, who cares anyway? I mean, let's just tie a bow around that just so it's not left open-ended. So, if you were seeking advice from a third party to come here with, would you seek it from Rumpus, given that he gets annihilated? I wouldn't. It's not the point. The point
whether
is...
he was or wasn't, he was not making any sense in his arguments against you.
Yeah. I mean, if he was being guided, it makes no sense. Maybe that's why it's of a quality that could be republished, because he was being fed. But it doesn't matter. It makes absolutely no difference to me. And I don't care if he was.
See, when he said... I'm sorry.
Yeah, just...
when he said atmospheric law, the only thing I could think of was how gas behaves.
First of all, what is atmospheric law?
Air sphere law.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The law of air being a sphere without a container.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right, but
that's the problem. If you dig into the atmospheric law, it talks about basing it on ideal gas law.
What you're saying is, even in atmospheric law, there's a V in there. Is that what you're trying to say?
I guess that, yes, and ideal gas doesn't exist.
No. But it's used to just describe general gas behaviour. But if you're saying they've got ideal gas law and atmospheric law, well, wouldn't that just be ideal gas law? If it is ideal gas law, as opposed to a utilisation to then spin it into something else that says air is a sphere shape? Because that's the name of the law. Atmo, air, sphere, shape,
Yes, you
law.
see that. Yes, you see, that's the problem. If you're saying it's got to do with ideal gas, you're actually debunking the notion because atmosphere moves. It's not a constant. It's not ideal.
No, but
So
there is
they're
no...
actually just double speaking their own rhetoric.
No. It's a tool to describe something. So if you say, well, there's no atmospheric law, yeah, I'll agree with that. Does that mean that when you're describing how laws behave with atmospherics, that means it's applicable because they've got a description of atmospheric law that uses ideal gas? Well, no, because ideal gases aren't real. Well, no. How are they describing the process with this tool for description? In this case, ideal gas. Well, in atmospheric law, you're talking about what they claim is a law, it isn't, about air being in a sphere shape. So, from the off, it doesn't matter what they're utilising, ideal gas law or otherwise, the whole premise is an oxymoron.
Which is my point that I was trying to make, but you guys sure broke it down pretty good there. Is that atmo is air. So how does gas behave? You always say, what do we know about gases? We know they don't bond, right? And we know what happens here in a closed system with entropy. Okay, well, I'm fine with that, but they're taking it and saying it's a sphere-shaped law. Well, that's begging the question, because you also say it's a closed system when it's convenient for you, and then open when you want to send Voyager out.
Well, speaking of that, Sly actually came back to me with his so-called context of a closed system that's open, because he said I took him out of context.
All right, what did he say?
No, that is what he said, I think. You took me out of context. That's about the sum total of a globe-tied rebuttal, isn't it? You took me out of context. That's about all he'll probably say.
No, I'm putting in Master B quickly for his response on what it's opposed to mean. It says the same thing, but okay.
Yeah, he'll just repeat his assertion. He'll double down on an assertion with no explanation. No, it's closed because it's open.
It can't be both.
Well, hopefully we'll get a link from Flatsoid and we'll see precisely how Sly has tried to square this circle. Want to read it out?
Yeah, I like using...
Hold on.
I'll shut up and he gets it up.
It is.
Okay, it is in. Yeah.
You want to read it?
You can read it. You've got a better voice.
Okay. Because you love to think that I said system is closed and open, ... when in context I said the Earth is a system which is closed but an open container. Even Oakley shut up when he realised you set him up.
You know how hard I laughed when he said that.
Oh my gosh, my hernia is popping right now.
Is he serious?
Oh gosh, that's funny.
That's the sad thing. He is serious.
Well, the open container would still, all the gas would be gone. And we would be
he's
dead.
Trying to say, look, you took me out of context when using system in capital letters. But in the next sentence he says, I said the Earth is a system. Again in capital letters. It's like, by putting the bit that you're double speaking about in capital letters and screaming it at your opponent, does he think that will get away with double speaking and contradicting himself in the next sentence? Because he's saying, you're taking me out of context by saying system is open and closed, when I actually said Earth is a system which is closed in an open container. Well, that's an open closed system. As you declared, precisely as quoted, with a citation, with the quote on screen that you typed out, Sly. So you're still just contradicting yourself, ad homing me, but you're declaring it with capital letters, like you saying system changes, that you're saying Earth is supposed to be a system that's both open and closed. It can't be. an open container, it's not closed.
And we'd have no air.
But you're also missing it. You're also missing it. He's saying Earth has a container.
Yeah, an open container. Well, okay. Open containers with gas in them will just expand in all directions to fill the availability of whatever can contain them if your container's open. So you can't have gas pressure without a container. You want to say it's an open container? Well, okay. There's no sides to the sphere Earth. It's just a surface with gas on it next to a vacuum without any containment. So how you can assert that it's a closed system but an open container? Well, no, you don't have any containment. There is no container.
Maybe he thinks it's like a golf ball you would drop into a tall drinking glass, and the top is open. And as in his world, the Earth spins at a certain point, it faces the open part.
No. I think Flatsoid already gave us a slightly more cogent explanation from them, or from Sly, which was to say that he's going to use a misappropriation of how water behaves with fish in it. Am I correct? Flatsoid?
Sorry, yeah, exactly. He thinks a fish tank with water in it is an open system.
That is closed.
Well, a closed system that's open.
Right. Well, water doesn't expand in all directions to fill the availability of volume it has to fill. So it's just a false analogy. No, water doesn't behave like gas. It's a fundamentally different state. A bit like it doesn't behave like bouncy balls. Go down, go boom, boom, like asserted by Thunderfoot Clown. Well, no, it doesn't behave like water either. Water's bonded. Gas isn't. It's unbonded and expands to fill the availability of volume. And as per this picture, if those clouds are high-pressure gas and the black bits are 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, then the gas will expand in all directions to fill the availability of that space. That's what it does. So where's the open-closed container in this picture? Well, there isn't one. There's no container. It's just a bullshit model. This is a cartoon. It's not a photo. This isn't real. Violation of natural law. It's just a cartoon. No space starman out in a car. If that was a guy, right? If that was a guy in the suit, well, why would he need to have a suit to stop the gas that he's breathing in the suit escaping into the black bit? That would be the 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. When right next to his head in this image, there's another type of gas pressure, also in exactly the same scenario, right next to a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. But it's not filling it, but he's got to worry about wearing a spacesuit. Yeah, right. No. Just a natural law violation. Total nonsense that people believe in because NASA have told them the sky's a vacuum.
That could be an open or that could be a closed open spacesuit, though, you know.
Yeah, the spacesuit's got to worry about natural law and gas expanding into a vacuum, but the planet below him hasn't. Yeah, well, it would too. It would just dissipate into the sky vacuum. That's why the sky is not a vacuum. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill the space.
Weird how with the astronauts that were training with vacuum chambers, they had a rupture of their seal in the spacesuit that wasn't even a full vacuum, and the guy almost died immediately.
Yeah, and yet on an EV, which is clearly not real, with a CGI projected image of a globe spinning beneath it that sometimes gets turned on and spins and sometimes is stationary. See Robert Bassano's video for that. But in that scenario, they have to worry about exactly the same thing as in your, what would you be, training, I suppose. But anyway, in that scenario, they've got to worry about the exact same thing, but in a much, much, much stronger vacuum. Much more powerful than anything they could create to test in down on the ground. If you assume the sky is a vacuum, which it is not. But nevertheless, when they're up there and you see them doing an EV, their heart rate, it sounds like it hardly gets above 90. Yet they've got impending death as soon as they open the hatch. Yeah, right. Just lies. Outright over the top lies. Yeah, I'm out doing an EV. I've got my spacesuit. I've got to worry about how thick it is because I don't want any of the gas to leave into the sky vacuum while I'm drilling the outside. Because obviously everything technical and in need of repair is on the outside of this thing in a sky vacuum. So we can show you pictures of Earth from space, and we have to constantly go out and fix stuff on the outside because that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Anyway, while they're outside with their heart rate hardly sounding like it's got above 90, they're looking down at high-pressure gas next to a vacuum not expanding to fill the availability of space in violation of natural law. It's an absolute joke. Of course it's fake. Of course it's CGI. Of course it's not real. They're claiming to operate in a fake place.
Yep, space is Comedy Central.
Definitely.
Yep, it's a joke.
And everyone believes it.
Maybe.
Not everyone.
Well,
Yeah,
Nathan,
yeah. I just want to say
the
not
Western
me.
world.
Not that kid at the launch that says, "Hey, that rocket's crashing, falling down."
Following the curvature of the Earth, son. This is bad. This is bad.
Yeah, I love how the
kids see it.
I love how the Guardian just comes up with an ad hoc explanation about gravity and Earth curve on the spot.
The Guardian newspaper?
Are you on two different chat rooms? I think you're saying that in the wrong chat room.
No, I'm just saying you said Guardian. I was trying to figure out what you meant by it.
Parent or guardian. The person talking to the kid while the kid's going, he's going down, he's going down, he's going to crash. The parent goes, no, that's... I don't know if he uses Coriolis or Earth turn or gravity or what he uses, but he just comes up, bang, ad hoc explanation there and then for the kid.
Yeah. Well, when you said Guardian and you being British, I thought it was your Guardian paper.
No.
It's like the guy
We
who
don't use
interviewed
that.
at 9/11 when he gave the answer for why the buildings fell down 10 minutes after they fell down.
Yeah, that report was hysterical.
Something.
And then a plane careened into the side of the buildings. And then later they both collapsed because of structural fires. It's like, this is a passing by guy, right? He's claimed to be a passerby. And yet he's giving a detailed rendition of the exact rundown of what's just happened, according to the footage we all saw. And knows precisely the cause of the collapse of the buildings, like you say, 10 minutes later. Yeah, probably because of structural fires. It's like, probably, bearing in mind that up until that point, absolutely no building ever that was steel structured had ever collapsed because of structural fires. But yet, most likely, according to this guy on the street. Yeah, right. Total propaganda. Yeah, it's total propaganda. It was hilarious. One of JLB's favourites, that particular clip, to the point where he can say it verbatim with all the inflections and, you can repeat it, but parrot it literally word for word, and he does quite frequently. Shout out to JLB.
Yeah, that was some scene. Whatever they did there, boy, they had us all fooled.
TV, man.
Hey, everybody.
TV. Is that Brian? Hey, Brian. You're here early.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, yeah. I wanted to come in a bit early, just before the show, and ask you if I could present something a little bit later, at the end of the live show, or even into the after show.
Yeah, or after housekeeping if you want.
Oh yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be straight after housekeeping, but yeah, just so I just wanted to ask you. You know, the reason I wanted to ask you first, I could have asked you in the show, and you probably would have said yes. But what I'm going to show is it's going to come out like as if I'm talking about pseudoscience, but it's not pseudoscience. I'm just going to point out something. It's pseudoscience from the border side. I kind of didn't say. I've known it since 2017. I didn't say anything about it. I held it back. I tried to talk about it before, but QE jumped down my throat, so I just said nothing about it. But I have a way of showing it now that will show. I won't explain too much about it. It's going to seem like pseudoscience at first, but at the end you'll be laughing.
Whoa, sounds controversial. Excellent.
Yeah, it is.
Excellent. I can't wait now.
Yeah.
You've definitely got my...
The only thing... I might even go towards the end of the live show because I have a few bits and pieces I need to get together for it. So I'll be kind of listening in and doing that.
Yeah, no problem. How long is it, just approximately?
Oh, only a couple of minutes. Like I literally need just your assistance for a couple of minutes, just for you to answer one or two questions, and just for the rest of the panel to be quiet. I'll ask you. You give me the answer. You're talking about 2-3 questions, and that the point will be made. But look, the whole thing will probably take only a couple of minutes. That's all.
Okay, no worries.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Brian, Neil, Flatzoid, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Hey, 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 everybody.
Good day, everyone.
Aloha.
Aloha. Aren't you from South Africa?
Away, my brew.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, one and all. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
Not from Waikiki Beach.
Only if you assume the datums are true.
What's a datum?
The presupposition of a reference of being a sphere, and then you measure it, and then you add a tangent to a straight line, and then you find out that the black swan demolishes the whole argument.
I see. Tangents,
So,
eh? Who'd
no.
have known it? Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Only if you assume the datum to be true.
I don't think you need a datum to assume that Earth's turning underneath as a second non-inertial spinning reference frame. Shout out to Tony, is it, for the super chat? Just bring up my other screen so I can actually read the thing. Hold on one sec. No, you don't need a datum for Coriolis. And that's what they
But you
use to
do
claim
need a
it.
presupposition.
I mean, they might claim the degree of drift change is based on a datum, a presupposition of where you are on a sphere. Salou from Calais says, Trey Dior. Thank you very much indeed, Trey.
Well, Coriolis
know
is
that-
real. Coriolis is a real effect. I mean, I've demonstrated it how much times. But do we see it on Earth-based? That's a whole different story. I'd say no.
No, Coriolis is real. We just don't see Earth turning underneath stuff to give us that effect. But that's what they claim. They claim Earth turns underneath stuff, giving us that effect. And if that was the case, then we'd be turning underneath aeroplanes, shortening their flight times. Hey, Arwin.
Hello.
But they're saying the luminary, the sun mainly, turning 15 degrees an hour, and they say that's Earth turning 15 degrees an hour. So it's not the Earth turning, but it's the sun.
Well, you can make that assertion if you choose to. The sun is an intangible object which I know very little about, but in terms of their assertion, yes, in terms of the sun at 15 degrees an hour, if you want to use that as the thing in the inertial reference frame, then yeah, we're moving around it and turning as we do so, and therefore the turn of the Earth would be Earth turning underneath it. But they claim it turns underneath with Coriolis deviation, and that's a Carte-Blanche effect that would happen always if we were on a turning Earth. We'd be turning underneath stuff that's not attached. That's what they claim. But that would shorten flight times, debunking the notion.
So you think that would be the same as your house. If you're driving away, you'd be looking as your house is driving away, but you're the one driving away. If something's up in the air, you would be spinning away from it. That's as easy as that.
Yeah,
you don't see this.
That's correct.
I'm arguing from the point that since there is no Earth-based Coriolis, the Earth isn't turning, so the luminaries are.
You can draw that conclusion, yeah, absolutely.
But even the deviations the stars take anyway, it doesn't fit how the globe would move with Coriolis. So
the bottom line is, if you want to take it as one of those two things, either Earth's turning underneath or they're turning over us, and you debunk the notion asserted with the heliocentric model that Earth is turning underneath stuff, that would be Coriolis drift you would observe as you turn underneath stuff. It seems to drift. Well, it doesn't matter if you describe that with a bullet. You're turning underneath it after it leaves the turning reference frame, drifting from your vantage point, because you're turning underneath it. That's what they claim. Or a football, Neil deGrasse Tyson's example. Football's kicked and you watch it from the stand, seeming to curve, because you're claimed to be turning underneath it. But that would shorten flight times, because we'd also be turning underneath aeroplanes. To see that effect, which they claim we have, but we do not. We don't turn underneath anything. Now, when we put that to the globetards, they think we're claiming we should turn underneath stuff, and then we get complete idiots like Simon Dan tell us that you and your reference frames are ruined. And it's globetards, your reference frames, needed to claim your version of us turning underneath stuff to prove we're spinning. Not mine, I don't claim that. But that's what you'll do if you're an idiot on the globe side and you don't understand what this argument entails. That would be Earth turning underneath stuff to cause drift that we would see.
There's only three options, I'm afraid. Earth and luminaries both turning. One. Second option, just the luminaries turning. And the third is just the Earth turning. So since we could understand what Coriolis is, we definitely count the Earth as not turning because we would have Earth-based Coriolis. So that's out of the question.
But yeah, would you also not need more than one reference frame for it to work?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, you'd need two reference frames. One, a non-inertial spinning reference frame, the one you'll be attached to and spinning underneath stuff to see it seem to deviate, and an inertial reference frame, the reference frame of stuff that's not attached that seems to deviate. Now, it doesn't matter what the stuff's doing in the inertial reference frame, it could be doing loop-de-loops, but the effect would be you moving towards it or moving away from it, and the effect of it seeming to curve because you're turning underneath it. That's Coriolis deviation. So if you're on a roundabout for the sake of argument and you're watching an aerobatics display over in the distance, but because you're on a roundabout watching it, it seems like the aerobatics display is coming towards you and then going away and then coming towards you and then going away. But that's you on a roundabout spinning underneath it. It has absolutely no bearing on them doing loop-de-loops and tricks in the sky because the effect you're observing would be an effect of you turning underneath something seeming to do something it isn't. So the fundies tell us all about what the plane does at this point. It's like, it doesn't matter what the plane does. The effect's only induced if you're turning underneath. And you're justifying why we don't turn underneath? Telling us about our reference frames we don't have? Because they claim reference frames, they claim drift, and then when we point out we don't have the effect, they start debunking their own claim. It's brilliant. Moving on. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
It's over there.
No evidence.
It is there. Whatever it is.
Whatever it
Well,
is.
It's a light in the sky.
It's a bit difficult to get to something that keeps moving away.
Right. Intangible objects, pretty hard to measure. Hey, Chocolate.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
I got your drift, Flatsoid.
Hello, distance to the sun. Anybody in Discord?
He's not drifting.
Feel free to pipe up.
No, there's no distance to the sun. You gotta establish a physical nature and a location, specific location in Euclidean space before you're going to, get any kind of literal distance out of it.
Arwen, they just need more time.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How did the powers that be come up with what they tell us the sun is?
Just people. When you say powers that should not be, just people. Andrew Thomas Young, for example, is just a guy. He's not a power that should not be. But he's made himself one. As you can too! Embrace the power of the individual.
So he just made up a story of what it is?
Yep. And you can too. Amazing.
They have to have something behind it.
My point is that you've perceived this action, if we just focus on bending tangents. Andrew Thomas Young, right? If you just focus on that, that's one guy that squared a circle in a heliocentric philosophy that, admittedly, most of the Western world think they're on. But he's just squared a circle. Does that make him a hidden hand? Is that a guy behind the curtain with Toto showing us him? Or is he publishing it for everyone to talk about and going off and talking to Rumpus about it? He's just a guy, right? So when you say powers that should not be, that's us. That's just people, right? That's us. Neil.
I guess.
Well,
I mean,
it's
they have to have
Helios.
something to know what the sun is. Would they just say what it is?
Who's they again?
There's,
Who's they? Sorry, who's they again? We'll beat this out of you, Neil. We'll get there.
well, let's say the supposed scientists that
It's-
say what the sun is, as you read it in the books when you go into school, that it's this burning ball of whatever.
Okay.
How'd they come up with that?
Well, that's scientists. That's people. And when you say scientists, in this example, you're talking about, the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics with their just so stories and no science. So in that example, Neil, while I understand what you're asking, but they're still not powers that should not be. Yes, they've been through the education system. You could call that nefarious, but that's reifying an institution. Well, the institution's run by people, though, isn't it? So we're talking about people. When we talk about they and the powers that should not be.
Yeah, people.
Right. So if I move on to any evidence of the molten iron core, that's not a story from the powers that should not be. It's some dudes come up with that at some point. I don't know who. We might find out like we do with Huygens and whoever. The Maitre.
Can I say something? Sorry, can I say something to Neil before you move on?
Yeah, feel free.
Just something small. Neil, in the 1800s, the first when spectroscopy was in its infancy, they weren't using it correctly, first off. It wasn't until later it started getting used correctly. First off, it started being used by astronomers to start deciding on what the things in the sky were. So they were using it wrong because they had ideas before they ever started using it. And they used that to back up their own belief. So it's just human stupidity due to belief, most of it.
Yeah. We've only got ourselves to blame. Well said.
Yeah, gullibility.
100 people watching. Woohoo! Please share the show. A very warm welcome to all of you who've just joined us. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Which one?
Whichever you want to give me scientific validity for.
Well, Newtonian was superseded over 105 years ago, and the one that superseded it is just the thought concept. So, definitely not science.
Pseudoscience?
Yeah, I was just about to wait for you to pipe up, Neil. So, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics? That would be the men you were talking about, the powers that should not be, the they, the guys, the dudes, the girls that come up with these stories. Do they have any science, though?
They're just scribes, really. They don't really decide it. They're just the filler guys. They fill up the story for people to get lost in and dream about. They're not really the designers,
Yeah,
I think.
they're just the cousins of the rocks.
But they are the designers. That's wrong.
But they're not really the deciders. They're just the scribes. They just write things up, make stories, and then the deciders, which are not them, are going the peer reviewers, perhaps.
Okay, just can you all give me a second with Darwin? So, you know, the discussion on Friday with Ed, where he's telling me that I must work within the parameters of his reification fantasy of a model that's sphere-shaped, and asking me questions about how the model operates. Well, in the case of that particular individual, so Ed in this example, his world is that model. Now, what the model can be is anything you like back to Andrew Thomas Young. If you want to say a tangent bends, then you can do that in a model if you want to. It's nonsense, but you can square that circle however you choose to. Say you've got a line of sight to something you cannot see, for example, as Andrew Thomas Young does. But he's still just squaring the circle in something that's very much going to form the basis of somebody's actual reality, or so they think.
Right. Okay.
So they're inventing reality. Yes, we can appreciate that it's a reification on the part of the individual that reifies it, and maybe even the person that's maybe a power that should not be, that's deliberately laughing at us while they bend tangents, or they're just a dude thinking they're doing a good job.
But that's why I said the story writers, the scribes, the astronomers, and the astrotheologists here. Here I go. But you know what I mean. They are scribes. They write the stories. They're not in control. They're designated to write the stories. And then they're not in control, like, oh, I am on the throne here, so I decide with everything where we're going to continue here on with those stories. No, that's other people that decide for them. They don't do that. Neil deGrasse Tyson is not the wielder of the script. He's just part of the writing and the telling of it.
Yeah, there's a base rhetoric, but there's often problems that arise within the rhetoric of their philosophy that need to be squared, and that's what's happened. We've got a patchwork quilt of nonsense. And whenever you look into where that nonsense has come from, it's come from some individual who squared a circle within a philosophy, within a model.
Huh?
Well, they're arbiters of a large... Hold on, just let me get to the point again. I'm just going to repeat it. They're arbiters of the reality, perceived reality, of a lot of the Western world now. And you're saying, well, no, they can't change reality. And you're saying, well, they're not on a throne. But even if you were on a throne, you're not going to change the natural laws. You're not going to change actual reality. But like in the torture scene in 1984, it's just up to the scribes, as you're describing them, to dictate to people how they perceive their reality. If it's written, it is so.
Well, that's what the people think about it. That doesn't make them the ones that determine, what's on the agenda, as it were.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does. They're the same people.
Hang on.
They're the same people of people, Arwin. Who else is the beyond that? Who's the hidden hand? Who's the guy behind the curtain then?
Well, you're not going to see them now, are you?
Oh, we do though. But we do. Andrew Thomas Young's very much a public person that we can look up, research, find out who he is, even discuss stuff with if we chose to. It's just a guy.
But in Arwin's explanation, he's saying he's just a scribe. And you have the producer and the director or somebody else. These are just script writers who keep the story going with the rest of the public.
Right. There has to be a coordinator to some degree. Now, that doesn't mean that coordinator is going to ensure that things will start to make more sense, because I'm pretty sure that the things that don't make sense are an integral, necessary part of the entire spell system, which it is.
Yeah,
so,
I agree with that.
Just because there is coordination doesn't mean that it's going to be more sensible in a technical sense. It's just better coordinated.
But that's an overriding
those
story.
Individuals, these individual people are not the ones that determine where everything's going to go. They're just the writers of the script.
Let me just address that. So, no, again, same example. One guy in that example, Andrew Thomas Young, you're saying that, no, there's a nefarious hidden hand that's in charge of him moving the narrative in that direction. And I'm saying, no, you could claim that an institution educated him in that fashion, but then you'd have to reify the institution into a hidden hand. Well, beyond the institution, the education system, developed by men, I might add, Where's the hidden hand? We've just got to the end of the line with Andrew Thomas Young, as far as I can tell. He's the one squaring the circle, as is so often, if not always, the case. So it's just people, Arwin. You're like, no. There's got to be more beyond that. Really?
Well, it is
What?
people. But I'm just saying that these astrophysicists and these blabberers that give us the stories, how it's supposed to be in a heliocentric model, they're not the ones in control of the heliocentric model. They're just the script writers. They still need approval.
From who?
You never know.
Well, it's either fails on its arse because it doesn't make sense, and therefore it fails, or it meets public approval in the form of Rumpus and the people in trenches who read it off and parrot us to us as arguments. Well, these are trench-level arguments, right? Often trench-level arguments don't even conform with their actual fundy belief. So, no, it's just whether or not it's parrotable and whether or not it's accepted at whatever level. And who's in charge of that? Is there a hidden... No, it's just one guy again.
Yeah, I'm not talking about what trench people do.
That's what they're parroting.
The coordination for the trench people. They coordinate themselves to wherever.
Do they?
I'm talking about the astrophysicists, the astronomers, that club.
Owen, if you belong to a cult, are you gonna, and you really believe in that cult, you're gonna play your individual role to make it work. That's just how it is. They're making their own story. They're not having anybody to tell them what to do.
I know.
That's why
I know, but then it has to go through approval stage, whether it's going to be taken seriously and used and spread out. That's the point.
Yeah, and we've got an example of that. So it does get used. It does get quoted here. Now, is it in line with geometry per se? No, not at all. You can't have a bent tangent, but it's still getting parroted. And my point is that as an individual, you've got a tremendous amount of power. And I'm trying to attribute that to something that I can qualify with an example. And that's Andrew Thomas Young, a dude who's just taken it upon himself or is paid to do this specific function. He's done it. I'm sure he's very proud of what he's done. It then gets utilised at trench level. And you're saying, well, no, there's a hidden hand behind that. I'm saying, no. If you recognise that one guy can make that kind of difference in a rhetoric, that it's part of what they now perceive to be their reality within their model, well, that's a tremendous amount of power that one guy's got. There is no hidden hand. But once that clicks, you go, hold on, so that dude has changed the perception of a huge number of people and indeed a worldview philosophy model that's reified by the entire Western world, or most of it. Well, that's a tremendous amount of power that one guy's got. Well, that could be you. You could do that. Anybody. Because who's guilty? Who's the hidden hand? My point, I'm getting rumpus on. Who's the hidden hand? Well, we are. But that works both ways. It's a double-edged sword. You can use it in the negative and say we're deluding and lying to ourselves and we've reified this model ourselves. Or you can take it the other way, which I'm giving with example with Andrew Thomas Young, and saying, look how much control and power this one individual's got. No hidden hand is required. So doesn't that say something to you? You could be that guy.
Talking about the same thing here.
Being rumpus style.
You're talking about creative power and determining the future of the narrative. I'm not talking about that.
Hello. Why are you rumpusing the shit out of me?
I'm not talking about that.
Why are you rumpusing the shit out of me? We're having
a
nice conversation
for 3 minutes about the same point for 3 times, and I'm trying to...
Yeah, through me. Can we not have a decent Arwin? You don't have to do it through me. Can't you just wait? Instead of rumpusing every word. So then I've got to repeat what I've said because you've rumpused it.
No. Because you already repeated it 3 times now. I get it. I get what you're saying. It's not the same power I'm talking about. You're talking about creative power from an individualist perspective. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about mechanics, the system that guides their process. You know, if this guy, his idea was a little bit more nutty and not so much in line with the proper way of doing this and the future of it all, the way things are presupposed, then it wouldn't have been accepted. It would have been ridiculed. We would have pointed it out and just say, this is ridiculous. And then everybody would probably just shove him into the background.
I agree.
Instead.
I agreed with you. And I said that comes from my example being a good example because it has been utilised. It has been put out to tender. It's been critiqued and then utilised. But it still doesn't change the origin of it. Your origin being a hidden hand, me being no, the individual can do a tremendous amount of stuff. You know, you just have to realise it. I just want to shout out Sacred Knowledge, aka Universe. It says, most of the stuff that is, let's try that again. Most of the stuff that is total BS that people believe was written by machines. That part. I'm sure it's my reading of your super chat. I don't fully follow what you're saying there. But thank you very much for the super chat. Did anybody else follow what that super chat meant?
I think it means it's all following a mechanism that was already pre-prescribed.
Yes, and that was my point too.
Yeah.
So it's not the creative power of the individual, which is magnificent. Hey, I know about it. I can be that guy too, and I am sometimes, almost by accident. But it's not just, that doesn't mean that as an individual, you can literally change everything. No, you can only change things in accordance to the system. And if it doesn't go in line with the system, basically the logical background structure of it all, not the literal information, then it's not going to be accepted. It's going to be rejected.
No, I agree. Okay, I'll agree with you. If it doesn't work as a cog in the machine, that's me saying if it goes out to tender and doesn't get accepted, it'll get ridiculed and ignored and then deleted from history. But if it is, it becomes a part of the cog in the machine. But it's got to work, and you're saying you can't literally just change the world because there's a machine working. And if your cog doesn't fit, then it's not going to work. Therefore, what are you going to change? But if you can make your cog work within the confines of that machine, while I'm getting talked over and rumpused, who's doing that? Have a nice conversation, whoever's got their mic wide open. So, yeah, I agree. You can't necessarily change the framework of the machine, but it doesn't change my point. That within that framework, if you want me to qualify it that way, one man has still made a difference and changed the viewpoint and argument structure and nature of somebody's perceived reality. Their perceived reality is that a physical geometric sphere edge formerly blocking things isn't now physically capable of blocking things because it's not capable of being seen, but is being moved with a measurement of it that can't be measured. And people are somehow swallowing that. Now, obviously we're fighting against that, but that's still come from one dude.
Right. Well, I agree with that part. As I said, I completely agree with you. We're just talking about slightly different things, but you already said that. So yeah, let's move on. We agree.
On. Fair enough. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container? Go ahead, whoever in Discord wants to go. Feel free. You don't have to answer that if it's something else. Go, Discord, go. Yeah, tumbleweed. Any evidence of you can have gas pressure without a container?
Well, according to Sly, it's an open container but closed.
That's nonsense.
We got a valve system, guys.
No, it's a closed system but an open container.
So, Arwen, are you saying that they evolved to this point?
Oh, good one.
It's open and closed. Well, then, yeah, the only way that I can think of would be a valve. You can open and close those. I wonder, though, do they have a valve from the inside, though? Because otherwise, how are you going to open this container?
It doesn't have a container. What container? Earth is claimed to be an open system in a sky vacuum with high-pressure gas not filling the availability of volume in violation of natural law. Their model's nonsense.
Right.
Even their tin can requires pressure container.
Right.
Is that it? Is that all of them? I think we've covered all the housekeeping questions now. Oh, R. Any evidence of the R value?
I think we demolished that already.
Yeah, Arwen's here. He's got value.
I got actual value, not presuppositional value.
Boom, boom.
Well, I work in rands, if that helps.
You work in grams? What, as opposed
Rand.
In grams? That sounds very dubious.
I was gonna. Yeah. Let's move on. So I think that concludes housekeeping. So Brian wants to open up a controversial can of worms, but he hasn't actually fully explained to us what the controversial can of worms is going to be. He's just given us some vague hints that it might be controversial. Are you there, Brian?
I'll go on mute.
Hey, Nathan. Yeah, just give me maybe 3 or 4 more minutes and I'll come back to you. I'm just finishing off one small thing. And
Yeah,
I'll
no
have it
worries.
ready to go. if you don't mind.
We can chat amongst ourselves without any particular issue.
Thank you.
So guess what, Globers? If you're watching this, you and your reference frames have been ruined. Simon Dan's ruined them.
I'm still laughing
Nathan,
over that one.
Nathan, you must say it correctly. You and your reference frames have been ruined.
You and your reference frames have been ruined.
May I ask who has reference frames?
Globers claim 2 reference frames and Earth turning underneath to give us not actual deflection as we observe things while we spin underneath. Problem is, we point out that doesn't happen and that would shorten air travel times. And they think that we're actually claiming we should spin underneath. So they start debunking their own claim and telling us that reference frames are ruined when we don't have any. It's only them that need them to claim drift. So Simon Dan, because he's stupid and doesn't understand what Coriolis effect is, has inadvertently debunked the claim we have drift and 2 reference frames to cause it. That would be us turning underneath as a spinning Earth turns underneath stuff to cause drift. But according to Simon Dan, reference frames have been ruined. We don't have any though, Dan. So own goal, mate. You clown. What I think that calls for is a complete non sequitur about diffraction.
But Nathan, didn't you think that his rebuttal as to why we didn't understand what he says was good when he tried to point out in a completely different conversation half a year ago how you didn't directly answer a technical question in that moment, not relating to the entire situation?
Yeah, it's called a non sequitur fallacy. I incorrectly identified it in my video as a straw man because in some small way I wanted to think the best of Dan, like he had something that seemed like it was related, i.e. he could challenge me on my understanding of diffraction in an argument that I knew damn well I wasn't going to get to explain a diffraction limit in contravention of a hijacking of perspective to somebody Fundy muting me. You know, if you only got 10 seconds, I gave up. Now, it's perceived I don't know what diffraction is. And in my video about it, I'm like, okay, I don't understand what diffraction is. Take it as read. No worries. Meanwhile, Dan's debunked Earth turn because it's claimed there's 2 reference frames and Earth turning underneath as one of them. And he's saying the reference frames are debunked and showing that when things travel, they don't have drift. They travel as one. Now, while that might involve him later presupposing that Earth's turning and the atmosphere's turning with it, even though we have multiple directions of surface winds, that doesn't give him drift, which is the actual claim from the fundamentalist religious zealot side that think we're on a sphere. You need drift. You need 2 reference frames. So if they're ruined, and he later tells Rumpus that he believes the drift, what's he believing in? He hasn't got any reference frames. He claims they're ruined. Apparently he's got an example of it. What a clown. Have we bought you enough time, Brian?
All your reference frames belongs to us. No,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
3 more minutes.
What? 2 more minutes, yeah.
Sorry, but
No worries.
Well,
Well, he does
2020
claim that you misrepresented him, Simon Dan.
Yeah, till I actually quote him verbatim. And then what I got from Rumpus when I quoted him verbatim, that would be, quote, you and your reference frames have been ruined, end quote, Simon Dan. The response I got from Rumpus was, I don't know what you're talking about with these reference frames. He was talking about a tractor pulling. In other words, the video that was attached to the quote, he denied all knowledge or understanding of the quote. He said I was misrepresenting because it's the most damaging bit. We don't have any reference frames. Dan says you. That's fundies with a globe belief, you, and your reference frames used to claim drift at 15 degrees an hour as it's claimed Earth turns underneath stuff not attached. Your reference frames have been ruined. Good job we don't have any. Nice home goal there, Dan.
What was his reason for posting the tractor video in the first place? What was he trying to say?
Well, that would be
with
because he's going to beg the question that Earth and atmosphere travel as one, flying in the face of a claim that they travel separately as 2 reference frames. He qualified it and told us that the reference frames that might have been used to actually make the claim that globes use to claim they spin would be 2 reference frames, but he said they were ruined. Now, the reasoning is because he's an idiot, doesn't understand Coriolis, and he's going to tell us that actually, no, we wouldn't expect Earth to turn underneath. They travel together as one reference frame. No drift. Not realising that the only people claiming drift are him, on his side of the argument with Coriolis effect and Earth turning underneath.
Well, his greasy lawyer, Rumpus, did come in and say that he was actually arguing the conservation of linear momentum. He wasn't arguing drift.
I see. Well, he later told Rumpus that he believed the drift And conservation of linear or angular momentum has absolutely nothing to do with two separate reference frames and Earth turning underneath. When you're talking about reference frames, which we don't and they do, they'd be talking about drift. So he did later qualify that he believed the drift, though, didn't he, Chocolate?
Yep. Definitely.
So they got a massive problem caused by Dan. Thanks, Dan. No drift. I think we need one more minute for... Once he comes off mute, I'll know Brian's ready. But what else can we talk about in the meantime? Oh, no, there we go. Hey, Brian.
Hey, yeah, I'm ready to go. This only take a couple of minutes.
Mike's all yours. Please don't interrupt him on the G Plus panel.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. This is something I've kind of held back for a couple of years. I tried to say it once or twice in the past few months, but the time wasn't right. But the time is right now. I was going to do this where I give a background to it and then do the thing with you, Nathan, and show it. But I'm going to show it first, and then I'll give the background to it and how I was led to doing this today. Hopefully this will give everyone a happy Monday. Okay. So, Nathan, you know what this is. I'm sure everyone out there knows what it is. It's a sundial.
Where's this being presented? Hold on. Where's this? It's not on your screen, so you haven't shared.
Oh, sorry. I never shared my screen. I forgot to share it. Oh, I didn't see it.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, this is a sundial. Everyone knows what this is. So this involves either the sun rotating around us, or us rotating above us, or us rotating underneath the sun. So how many rotations does this require, Nathan?
How many rotations does it require? What do you mean it require? Yeah. It's not rotating at all. The shadow is.
Yeah, for it to work, for the sundial to work, how many rotations does it need? A rotation of the Earth and the sun, or the rotation of the Earth alone, or a rotation of the sun?
Well, it's claimed that you'd have one rotation of the Earth moving the sun and the position of that shadow, so one per day.
Yeah, so it can be the sun rotating over us, or it can be the Earth rotating underneath the sun. That's the claim. Yeah, but either way, it's only one rotation. That's it. It's only one rotation is all this part are necessary for the sundial. For the Coriolis effect, how many rotations are necessary?
Just one. You turning underneath anything not attached.
Yes, exactly. So we've established that for a sundial to work, you only need one rotation. The rotation of the ground it's on, or the rotation of the light above it. Okay? Now, this here is the EQ mount telescope. Now, this tracks the sun. The more expensive ones, they are aligned with Polaris correctly. There's a rough alignment with the cheaper ones, but the more expensive ones, there's a very fine alignment you have to do. But all that doesn't matter, because the whole point of what this does is that this tracks the sun. Now, it has 4 axes of rotation, but they're only for angles. So once they're all fixed and you have your angle set up, you can then, with the expensive ones, you can then set that to track the sun or another luminary in the sky. And it will track the sun 15 degrees an hour from east to west. Following, I'm using the sun as the example, going from morning to some sunrise to sunset. And it'll keep on going back around once you have everything set up right. And it'll meet the sun when the sun rises again and go all the way to sunset again. So for that to happen, that requires one rotation per day of the EQ mount telescope at 15 degrees an hour. Now, the problem here is this working on a globe model would mean there's 2 rotations happening at the same time. There's a 15 degree an hour rotation of the EQ mount telescope and a 15 degree an hour rotation of the Earth. And I'm just going to show here, okay? The EQ mount telescope will be going east to west 15 degrees per hour, And the ground it's on is moving west to east at 15 degrees per hour on the globe model. So 15 plus 15 equals 30 degrees per hour. So if we were on a rotating sphere or anything rotating, it would mean that for this to work and track the sun at 15 degrees per hour, which it does, or at any, even if it was only tracking at 1 degree per hour, that would still not work for the globe model, because that would mean 16 degrees per hour. And it wouldn't work because you have to add the west to east and east to west rotation. Because for their model, there is 2 rotations going on when this is working in their belief. They have their own ground globe going from west to east, and this going east to west. So how can this go from east to west at 15 degrees per hour and track the sun, while the ground underneath it is going west to east at 15 degrees per hour? That would be 30 degrees per hour. That would mean the sun would have to be moving at 30 degrees per hour. See, what people don't understand is the sun is stationary in the globe Earth model. So what they think they're doing with this is they think they're counteracting the rotation of the globe Earth by going the opposite way at the same speed as the sun. But we're told in the globe Earth model that the reason the sun rises and sets is due to the rotation of the Earth moving at 15 degrees per hour, which is at 360 degrees in 24 hours. But it cannot be going or moving at all if the EQ mount telescope can track the sun at 15 degrees per hour across the sky from sunrise to sunset and back around to sunrise again. Now, I posted a video of this thing actually happening in Master B if you want to post it into the chat. I'm not going to play it because it's from Wolfie6020 and it's from a good few years ago. He'd give you a strike, I'd say, if you played it. I don't know if he would, but he might do after this. And he shows his EQ mount telescope tracking the sun. It's only 3 minutes and 44 seconds. It tracks the sun from morning to noon and back to morning again. So the fact that he can track the sun east to west at 15 degrees per hour means the Earth has to be stationary. Because all you'd have to do on the globe Earth would be set up a lens that is at the right angle for the sun and leave it there stationary, and the Earth rotating should allow you to see the sun go across the sky. But they actually counteract the west to east rotation with an east to west, with an east to west rotation. And they think that they're cancelling out the rotation of the Earth. Why would you need to cancel that out? If it was rotating, you wouldn't need to. You just have something stationary at the right angle to follow the sun. Do you understand what I mean?
Kind of. I'll have to think about it. I've taken in what you've said, if that's what you're asking. Whether or not I agree at this point, I don't know. I have to think about it in terms of their reification of a sphere turning underneath stuff and how they claim it would be counteracting it, and how you're saying no, just having the Earth turning underneath wouldn't involve the same degree of movement from that particular equatorial mount, because you'd have to track the sun as well, is what you're saying, right?
Well, the sun either moves at 15 degrees an hour around us, or we rotate at 15 degrees an hour underneath it. So you can't have 2 rotations going simultaneously at 15 degrees an hour against each other. Just like the airplane flights from Los Angeles to North Carolina will be different east to west and west to east. Because when they're going to against the globe Earth rotation, they'd have a shorter flight of an hour and a half. They'd end up with an hour and a half flight as opposed to 4.5 hours the other way or whatever. Okay. So how could you have it working both ways? You can't. It's a complete impossibility.
Fair enough.
Because we only, as I showed, 1 second just before I finish, as I showed, a sundial only works with 1 rotation. So how can you have 2 working? Can't.
Excellent.
Okay, I'll let it go with that.
Thank you very much, Brian. Julio Pabon says, Simon Dan needs a new lawyer. Thank you very much for the super chat, Julio Pabon. Really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I never actually gave the background to that.
Well, before you do, just while it's fresh and everyone, hold on. Before you do, anyone who wants to challenge it on Discord or even in the G Plus panel, feel free.
There's just one thing I wanted to ask. I don't see it as 2 rotations because the sun is following the 15-degree hour path. That would be 1 rotation.
Exactly.
So where does the second rotation come from?
But there isn't two. It's only on the globe model that does, yeah. But there can't be two. There can only be one. Because a sundial can't work with 2 rotations. Well, it can, but it will be twice as fast. The second rotation is the claim of the globe side. But their claim that they're going, that the EQ mount is cancelling out the west to east rotation with an east to west rotation of the EQ mount, and it has to go with. Sorry, go on.
Oh, so that cancelling gives it the 15-degree hours. That's what you're trying to say.
That's what they say. They try to say that they are cancelling out the west to east rotation by sending the EQ mount east to west. But if you're tracking the sun, it has to track it at 15 degrees per hour. So if it's moving at all, then it's not. If it's moving against the supposed rotation of the globe Earth, then how is the globe Earth moving if it's tracking the sun?
Sorry,
Yeah, go on.
Sorry to interrupt you guys. Seems we've got Simon Dan in the chat, and there's a bit of an issue with something he's saying. It says, lol, look at the directions of the arrows. The 15 degrees both cancel each other out. 15 degrees of the 2 reference frames, Dan? Because I've got news for you. You and your reference frames have been ruined. So when you're telling us about the 15 degrees that are cancelling each other out, are you talking about the non-inertial spinning reference frame that's claimed to be turning underneath to give you Coriolis drift that you say are ruined? Again, Dan, given that you've given us a non sequitur fallacy in your rebuttal from your echo chamber, both literally and figuratively an echo chamber, I might add, you still seem to be asserting something you say is ruined. So you're making no sense, Dan. How can you be telling Brian about this 15 degrees, that's Earth turning underneath as a second reference frame, when you specifically tell me my reference frames are ruined and I don't have any? Only you have them, and here you are claiming them. So what's been ruined, Dan? You're still yet to claim what you actually claim when you said the reference frame's ruined, and here you are claiming them. 15 degrees of what, Dan? Drift as Earth turns underneath as a second reference frame. Well, quote, Simon Dan. Or, as I like to now call him, Stuttering Simon. Stuttering Simon says, you and your reference frames have been ruined. So 15 degrees, Dan? No, reference frame's ruined. From your own lips, my friend. Do I need to trim this out and quote yourself back to you with your little chat comment about having 15 degrees? Because I've got no issue, Dan. You've got a complete paradox. Reference frame ruined and what? Account for this 15 degrees drift from a second reference frame turning underneath? You're talking nonsense, Dan. You've been caught out on your own bollocks, my friend. And it's going to need explaining. So you think you can come here, slope your way into the chat and then talk about 15 degrees drift in a second reference frame when you and your reference frames have been ruined, Dan? Dan!
Do you think Dan will be brave enough to come in and talk?
Let's make some space. Someone in the
I don't know about Dan or the reference frames, but talking about that guy in his equatorial mount, it makes sense if you want to visualize.
Sorry. No, we're talking about Dan. Dan's in the chat saying 15 degrees. I'll read it for you.
Right.
Lol, look at the direction.
Deals with it.
Sorry. I'm asking if anyone wants to make some space so Dan can actually join in the last 10 minutes. So a couple of people in Discord, if you can drop, that'd be really handy. If you're not talking.
Would be great to see Dan, yeah?
Epic. Space on the panel for you, Dan. You tweeted me about reference frames being ruined, Dan. Now you seem to be in my chat talking about 15 degrees. Cancelling each other out? What? The reference frame that's turning underneath that you say is ruined. That's going to need explaining. Someone else joined instead, unless this is down on a different alias. Down on a different alias. Mr. Feedback. Mr. Feedback. No, you're going straight back on mute. Wow.
Isn't this an open discussion that anyone can join?
Yeah. There's 2 gaps on the panel. We've
Yeah, but
got a
you must remember,
contradiction.
Simon Dan always just says, I don't debate flat earthers.
Well, he's claiming
Because he's too
drift
flippant
in the
scared.
chat. So while he's saying he doesn't debate flat earthers, he's in a debating platform in the chat talking about reference frames and 15 degrees of drift and it cancelling out the earth turning underneath as a second reference frame. Dan, Dan, you and your reference frames have been ruined. Yet to explain that. What's it been now? We'll make a 15th video, Dan. Yeah? Shall I start giving them a little hash and a number? How many times Dan's ignored his egregious error? Yeah, I don't mind. 15th video, right, Dan? Dan in the chat talking about 15 degrees second reference frame turning underneath, as is claimed. And yet, you and your reference frames have been ruined? That's a problem.
What reference frames?
The ones that have been ruined, the ones they claim drift with, those reference frames, ruined ones, they're claiming they've got them. Dan says they're ruined.
So their reference frames. So
Yeah.
their reference frames are ruined, actually.
Yeah, they're reference frames. And the drift Dan's in the chat claiming now. What, the drift you believe in, but demonstrated otherwise and claim the reference frames used with this 15 degrees you're detailing from my chat is ruined, Dan? Man, your fans are going to be so pleased with you, given that you're not explaining this to them. What reference frames? Oh, it's got to be #100. What reference frames, Dan? Which ones are ruined? Don't seem to be telling us. Am I missing something?
I don't know why you
No,
need
he's
more
just a
than
scaredy
just
cat.
the one that you're on.
Who's trying to challenge this? Let's have him have his moment. The thug mean baby duck.
Well, I was talking to the point of the guy who didn't understand the equatorial mount. You can just be on one reference frame, stare at a dot on a wall, and rotate your body. If you can't see the dot anymore, then you can, rotate your head opposite of the direction your body's rotating to keep it in sight. That's all an equatorial mount does.
That's nice. It's claimed Earth's got 2 reference frames though, and the Coriolis drift. Well, that's fascinating, but it's not what Globers claim. Maybe you're trying to debunk the claim that we have 2, like Dan did. Is that what you're trying to do? Claim we've only got 1 reference frame?
I was merely pointing out how the equatorial mounts work for that guy who was struggling to figure it out with his examples.
Can I respond to that, Nathan, there, please?
Yeah.
I'm not struggling to understand anything, pal. It's you who is struggling to understand. You cannot go 15 degrees in one direction and also turn 15 degrees in the other direction and still be moving at 15
I
degrees.
just gave you the example. Stare at a dot on the wall, rotate your body.
Absolutely.
And if you rotate your head to follow the dot in
If you give me a chance, I'll give you an example.
your body rotating, you'll keep it
Guy,
in sight.
dude, just let him respond. He won't be long.
Oh, bother. The example is Wolfie 6020 tracks the sun with his EQ mount telescope. How can you track the sun east to west with a thing that moves east to west at 15 degrees an hour?
I just
If the sun is
explained
supposed to
it
be
to you. The sun
stationary on
isn't
your model.
moving. The sun's
And your model-
a solitary dot on the wall, and you're the one rotating, not the sun. So if you're rotating east to west or west to east, it doesn't
If
matter.
I'm rotating,
and you
why is he
turning
needing
your
to
head
rotate
to
the
follow
EQ
the
mount?
dot in opposition to the
If
direction your
I'm
body's rotating,
rotating,
you
how
keep
come
it
he's needing
in
to
sight
rotate the EQ
constantly.
mount?
That's all an
Brian,
equatorial
I
mount
want to hear
is.
it. Brian, I want to hear his answer. Try once more. Doug, go ahead.
As I was trying to tell him, if your body is rotating, which you can analyze and you can make an analogy with the Earth with your body rotating. If your body rotates and you have a dot on the wall, you will not see the dot anymore if your head remains straight. But if you crane your neck in opposition to the direction your body turns, you can keep the dot in sight. That's all an equatorial mount does.
Yeah, that's a completely false equivalency. That's not what the EQ mount is doing. The EQ mount telescope is tracking the sun at 15 degrees an hour east to west. It's moving at 15 degrees an hour because it has to, because the sun is moving at 15 degrees an hour. Now, a sundial shows that you only need one rotation. Either the sun is rotating above us or we're rotating underneath the sun. The sundial doesn't have two rotations. One rotation is all that's needed for a sundial to work. Your EQ mount telescope is moving east to west at 15 degrees an hour. The globe out claim is that the globe is moving west to east at 15 degrees an hour. That means at 30 degrees an hour will be covered. If I'm moving east to west at 15 degrees an hour and you're moving west to east at 15 degrees an hour, then we will, if we're moving towards each other, we will have covered 30 degrees within that hour, not 15. Do you not understand that?
I understand what you're saying, but that's not what an equatorial mount does.
That is what an equatorial mount does, because the video is there. If Nathan wants to share it in the chat.
I'll put it out. I did put it up. I did play it for the audience when it was up. I'll show it now.
All right. But that's exactly what an EQ mount does. It tracks the sky. The sky, the sun and the stars move at 15 degrees per hour. That's what it does. It tracks the sky. So if Woodfee 6020 can track the sun at 15 degrees per hour moving east to west, and the thing actually moves at 15 degrees per hour east to west, then how can the Earth be moving west to east at 15 degrees per hour? It cannot. That's an impossibility.
If you put an equatorial mount out there and you don't let it auto track, it will go in the direction of the Earth's rotation. It won't track anything.
Why are you assuming Earth rotation?
Just like how I told you with the person staring at a dot on a wall. If your entire body rotates, your eyes are always pointing forward. Just like the telescope will only look at whatever you're pointing it at. But if you want to track something like the dot on the wall, like the sun in the sky, your eyes can rotate counter to the direction your body's turning and keep it in sight, no matter how far your body rotates.
We're talking about.
I don't know how to explain it any better.
We're talking about the EQ mount telescope moving at 15 degrees per hour east to west on a claimed globe that's supposed to be rotating west to east.
You both gonna have to hold off attacking each other just for 1 second while I shout out a few super chats. So shout out to Retro Bill. He says, apparently science has now gained the ability to walk. I keep hearing people say, follow the science. Right on, reification fallacy. It has no legs. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Also, Pugsley Lovejoy says, glad to see Nathan calm down and focus on finding truth rather than yelling at stupid people. No, I'll more than happily yell at stupid people. Dan is a stupid person. He's claiming drift from a chat where he's being asked repeatedly to actually explain which reference frames he says are ruined. That'd be yours, your reference frames. The same ones you've used to claim drift in this chat, or say that you're counteracting the inertial reference frame that turns underneath in your vernacular of an Earth that spins. Yeah, that's the reference frames you've ruined, Dan. Anyway, right, did you two want to get back to it?
Yes, please.
Go ahead. You had the last word, Brian.
Yeah. Well, what I say before, just for this man, the sun in your model is stationary. It's us that's supposed to be rotating. So there should be no need for an actual physical rotation of 15 degrees per hour, east to west, of an EQ mount telescope. If we're rotating west to east, and the reason we get sunrise and sunset is due to the rotation of a supposed globe Earth. It's an absolute physical impossibility. It would mean that if the EQ mount is moving 15 degrees per hour east to west, and we're supposedly rotating west to east 15 degrees per hour, that's 30 degrees per hour, not 15. Now we know the sun is moving above us 15 degrees per hour, and we know we can track it with an EQ mount 15 degrees per hour east to west. So how could we be on something moving west to east at 15 degrees per hour? If he wants to respond.
Oh, no, I already ceded my time, man. If what I said didn't explain it to you, then it's not going to get explained to you.
No, it's not, because what you said is if we...
Oh, we lost you, Brian.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, what you said is a completely false equivalency. You have us already looking straight at something and turning our body and then turning our head around to look back at it. That's not what's happening here. We're supposed to be on, as I said, that's why I use the sundial. Sundial only needs one rotation. The rotation of the sun or the rotation of the earth. One rotation, not two rotations. You don't understand what I'm saying because you're thinking from a completely false equivalency because you're not dealing with the reality. The reality is in your model, the sun is stationary.
Okay, well, as you've laboured your point at him about 3 or 4 times, if he wants to respond with the same thing again, he's more than welcome to. Go ahead, Thug.
Oh, no, it's perfectly fine. I will cede the. You're not going to get it. It's okay.
Fair enough. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
It's a complete impossibility. Thank you, Flatside. If Nathan wants to share,
Also sounded like this guy is saying that there are 2 reference frames because the Earth is apparently spinning underneath stuff.
Yep.
So reference frames ruined.
Yeah, he declared the Earth was spinning.
Okay, I've got Flatsoid's handwritten drawing on to try and illustrate what you're explaining.
At least that's what I heard.
I mean, I've got to be honest.
It's the same as...
I understand the guy's explanation, and that's how I understood it to work, and I don't see an issue with that. Now, I'm going to have to re-listen to Brian's explanation, because at this point I don't get it, or I don't agree with it. I don't know which.
Yeah, I see. I understand that. I reckon this would happen with a lot of people because they what we are told about the EQ mount and what it does. We're told that it does all these movements and that it's really complicated and it all sorts itself out. And that's the reason why people. It's such a simple thing. It's going to be difficult for people to just accept it. There should be no reason, if we're already rotating, there should be no reason, Nathan, for us to need something that rotates to track the sun. We should just need a lens at the correct angle for that day and time of year to track the sun. Because we're supposed to be rotating already in the globe model.
But it would move away. As you point your head directly up, if you lie on the ground and you're on a roundabout, well, as the light that's above your head moves around to meet your eye line, you're not tracking it, it's moving away from you. That's apparent deflection. So to counteract the apparent deflection they claim as Earth turns underneath in a second reference frame that Dan says is ruined, that's got to be counteracted by the EQ mount. And you're saying, well, if you look at a sundial... I'm just disagreeing with you here, Brian. Sorry, the other guy's already done that.
Yeah, but you're coming from the point of view of the sun. See, you're lying on the ground, but the sun actually moving above you. I'm talking about where the sun is stationary, and from the start of the day, if you set up a lens on something that's moving, if the sun is stationary and we're moving, you should only have to set up a lens that's correct for that time of year.
No, not at all. If you imagine that you're on a rolling pin, but that's like human size, like you had on one of those Takeshi challenge things. You know, it's like a rolling log. Yeah?
Yeah, I know what you're.
Right. Well, imagine you're holding onto it, so you're looking down at the log, and there's a light above your head. Yeah? Well, as you rotate around on the log, so you're now hanging off the log looking up, so you're literally dangling down but looking up at the light. Well, as you've rotated round, you haven't tracked the light. The light, from your position, has seemed to come around to meet your eye line. But you haven't tracked it throughout that rotation, and likewise you wouldn't track it on a presumed to be second reference frame ruined, according to Dan. You'd have to track it, you'd have to counteract it, and that's what they claim the EQ mount's doing, and you're saying, no, look at a sundial, but the sundial shadow isn't following the sun, it's not tracking it. It's moving in contrast to it. So it's literally moving with a fixed position to give you the shadow that moves. Well, if your shadow was the telescope, you'd have to counteract that movement at the same rate. You're saying, no, we'd automatically track it. Well, why would we? Unless you moved your head like the guy explained to you.
Well, the point I'm making is that if it's moving at 15 degrees per hour east to west, and we're moving at 15 degrees per hour supposedly west to east, that means in 1 hour's time there'll be a 30 degrees per hour movement.
Yeah, movement. So you've got to counteract that.
Well, 15 and 15 is 30.
Yeah, well, no, you're minusing one. They're going in opposite directions.
Yes, but if the point, we shouldn't need to have this thing going at the EQ mount going at 15 degrees per hour east to west to track something if we're the ones moving. I understand what you're saying about how it's going to be difficult just to have like you're saying on the rolling pin, like on those games and that. I understand why you come around and see it, the light again. But if we're moving at 15 degrees per hour and the EQ mount is moving at 15 degrees per hour, it wouldn't be able to track the sun. If it's moving at any speed different than the rotating Earth,
Sorry,
not going to be able to track it.
Brian, can I try and explain it to Nathan quickly?
Yeah, off you go. Yeah.
He's saying the EQ mount itself is moving 15 degrees an hour. Plus, on the surface, which is
it's
also
the pennies dropped.
You understand?
I finally figured out what you mean. So the mount is attached to something physically moving 15 degrees. The mount. And that movement isn't being counteracted. It's not like you're physically picking up the mount and moving it back the other way at 15 degrees. It's a different frame of reference that you've got mounted to something moving 15 degrees that's also moving 15 degrees. And you're saying that the one isn't counteracting the other. What would be necessitated to counter that would be to physically pick up the EQ mount and move it at 15 degrees an hour at whatever rate the Earth's claimed to turn underneath, so that you counteract that movement. But having it attached doesn't counteract that movement. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now I'm clear. Thank you, Flatzoid. Now I get it. I still think you're wrong.
There's a simpler answer for that.
Go on.
Well, equatorial mounts require a geometric horizon.
Yeah.
They're using a rubber ruler. Who cares what they say at this point?
Well, what they say is I hate to contradict you because you're normally so on point. No, what they say is critical because they're going to have to formulate this into a logical fallacy in order to claim that it's globe proof. So earlier, the guy because Brian's doing it, I couldn't really criticise him, so I'll stop myself. But when he says, well, as the Earth turns underneath, it's like, well, arguing within that rhetoric, so fine. But that's just a begging the question fallacy if he was to propose it. He wasn't. He's just contradicting Brian in his assertion about how it works as Earth turns underneath, so fine. But beyond just begging the question that Earth's turning underneath causing that, they'd formulate it into a fallacy and affirming the consequence. So they'd say if Earth is turning, then the equatorial mount will track the sun as it counteracts the spin. The equatorial mount does counteract the spin of Earth, though I beg the question in my conditional statement. Therefore, Earth is my conditional statement. So they affirm the consequent with the EQ mount. So unless you actually beg that question and affirm the consequent, you're never actually going to turn that movement into the assumption that Earth's turning underneath as a second reference frame that's been ruined according to Dan.
Yeah, but what they're measuring at the horizon, they're throwing that away with the geometric horizon.
You can weasel that in there, but that's that. The only reason I corrected you is because you're saying what they say at this point isn't important, and it is, because they're going to have to make a claim at some stage, and when they do, they'll affirm the consequent. So what they say. My point is, who is that? Is that Dave? John, rather, not Dave. John. My point is that when you've got this argument, you've got to actually get them to commit to a position. What are you saying this proves? What does the equatorial mount do, Mr. Globe Believer? And then get them to confirm their position. How does it prove Earth is spinning? How does it prove the equatorial mount is attached to a second non-inertial spinning reference frame? And then get them to detail it. And when they do, they'll say, if Earth is a non-inertial spinning reference frame, then equatorial mount will track the movements. Equatorial mount does track the movements, therefore Earth's a non-inertial spinning reference frame.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I missed the show. All right, I see what you're saying.
But we didn't get that far with the dude, and I don't think he wanted to get into that, the thug guy. Because, no one wants to be held to task on their affirming the consequent or begging the question fallacy, especially when they're just correcting somebody who is actually wrong within the rhetoric, and they're detailing it within the rhetoric. Ed was trying to have me over a barrel for saying, well, if you're saying this within the model, then you need to work within the model. Well, in that instance, Brian is working within their version of what they say happens within their model of a spinning Earth. So the guy correcting him, fair game. I'm not going to point out he's begging the question. And he hadn't affirmed the consequent yet. So, Thug, how does the equatorial map prove we're spinning? He's obviously buggered off, or he knows better.
I mean, if you just have observations, you know the sun at this time comes up on the east and this time sets in the west. It's very simple just to make a mechanism that's going to rotate inner axis to pick it up at those certain times. Doesn't prove anything. That just proves your mechanism can rotate to that degrees an hour in that allotted time.
Well, it's a Coriolis claim. We all appreciate that the equatorial mount's making a claim with Coriolis effect, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Well, it's the same rebuttal. So you're saying Earth spins underneath, in this case, the sun. Okay. So if Earth turns underneath the sun, and a bullet, and a ball, as is absolutely asserted in your rhetoric, they claim we have Coriolis deviation on an Earth that spins. Well, if that's the case, then flight times would be shortened. We'd be turning underneath aeroplanes and drones, and on the equator, you'd launch your drone, press nothing on the sticks, and it would drift away at 1,000 miles an hour, while your clever dick mate says, nah, it's not really flying away at 1,000 miles an hour, it's us turning underneath that makes it look like it's spinning away at 1,000 miles an hour. Really, it's just hovering. Well, that never happens, because drones don't drift away from you at 1,000 miles an hour. You don't go up in a balloon and land on a different country.
Can I say something, Nathan?
Go on.
If you took off in an airplane on the globe Earth at the equator, and you flew east to west at 1,040 miles an hour, and the globe Earth is rotating west to east at 1,040 miles an hour, would it take you 24 hours to get her back around to where you started?
No.
Well, that's the same thing with the EQ mount that I'm saying.
Okay, I'll have to wrap my head around that. Obviously,
because the book,
without convoluting this example, though, Brian, with your example detailed in mind, if Earth's turning underneath, then you're going to have a shortened flight time. That's the bottom line.
Exactly. You'll also have a shortened, if your EQ mount is going 15 degrees per hour, east to west, and it's on a rotating object that's going west to east at 15 degrees per hour, then how would it take it 24 hours to come back around to the same point?
It wouldn't, because it's fixed. It's not being... I pulled this apart, hopefully subtly, to spare embarrassment, by saying the EQ mount's not being picked up and moving like an aeroplane, is it?
No, but it is rotating. It is moving.
and just counteracting the claim that the Earth is turning. Not turning underneath in that example. It's counteracting it. You're part of it and then moving your head, in effect, like you're on that roller with a light above you. Well, you're just moving your head to keep it above you, like a ballerina does to stop himself getting dizzy. They focus on one point on the wall, spin, and then turn their head to look at it again, so that their head is relatively looking at the same place the whole time. But they have to turn their head in the counter clockwise or clockwise way, whatever the opposite of their turn is, to keep their head from spinning with the turn. But that means correcting for it, turning the other way, like the equatorial mount.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand the claim. I totally understand the claim.
Maybe this needs a bit of work, and I just don't understand it. I'm more than willing to say, while I suspect you might be incorrect in your assertion, I'm more than happy to be corrected.
Okay, let me give you another example. Let's just say the globe Earth is stationary, and you fly a plane east to west at 1,040 miles an hour. Then you will take 24 hours to get around to where you started. Now, if the globe Earth is moving in the opposite direction at 1,040 miles an hour, then you will take 12 hours or whatever to get around to where you started.
Yeah.
If you imagine the lens of the EQ mount as being that airplane.
But it's not an air. It's not being picked up and moved.
No, it's not. But that's the point of the EQ mount. It's tracking the sun. How can it track it at 15 degrees per hour if the thing it's on is also rotating at 15 degrees per hour?
It has to move its head.
All right, look, I'm not going to keep pushing it. Yeah, I let it go, and we'll see what happens in the future.
We'll come back to it. It might be that I'm wrong. Yeah. I can see how you can maybe weasel this in because it's not moving, and therefore not actually counteracting directly Earth moving by just physically lifting it up like a hovering drone. So if you've got the example that Flatsoy did with his balloon that's not attached anymore, what should happen is Earth should turn underneath the balloon, and the alignment of the camera, when it's not attached, should track the sun. In other words, if the camera was just on the tethered balloon, by tethered I mean weighted in such a way that it's not moving, it should move, i.e. it should have apparent deflection, but the apparent deflection would stay in line with the sun. So in the case of your EQ mount, it's physically attached to the ground and just moving its head, but a balloon that was filled with helium and then weighted in such a way that when you had hold of it, it didn't move, you should let go of it and Earth should rotate underneath it at the rate that the sun appears to move. Well, that camera would stay locked onto the sun, but it would also be drifting away from you as it did so. So you take the camera off the top of the balloon that's been weighted and is in equilibrium, I might add, and then you go back to it, but you'd have to chase after it because it'd be in a different continent 15 degrees later, right? An hour later, it's somewhere else. But in the period that it's been moving, the Earth's been claimed to be moving underneath that non-attached balloon, what you'd get from the GoPro attached to the top of it would be the sun just in a fixed relative position, not moving at all. Right? But we don't experience Earth turning underneath, and equally, the equatorial mount's not being lifted up and hovering like a helium-filled balloon to therefore track it as the day goes by and Earth turns under the equatorial mount. But that's what you'd have to make your scenario make sense. I didn't want to labour it, Brian, but you forced me to.
Okay, it's okay. I'm not going to make a thing out of it. We'll come back to it maybe another time. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't believe I am, but if I'm willing to be.
Well, let me try once more. The only way you're going to get a requirement that the equatorial mount doesn't move, we're all in their rhetoric. I don't want anyone coming to me, or I do. Feel free to come to us and debunk what we're discussing, because we're talking about it in the globe Earth that spins rhetoric. So feel free to debunk us. If there's anyone else out there with a big name, more subscribers than me, someone like maybe Simon Dan, maybe come along with an example that says something along the lines of, you and your reference frames have been ruined because you're assuming that me and Brian now believe this shit that Earth turns underneath, even though we're just discussing it within the rhetoric. Anyway, Brian, in the paradigm, the bullshit world of Earth turning underneath as a second reference frame Dan says is ruined, if you attached a GoPro to the top of a balloon and let the Earth turn underneath as a second reference frame, then in that example, no, you wouldn't have to move your head because the Earth would be turning underneath the balloon. But in the case of the equatorial mount, as the Earth turns and the equatorial mount is attached to it, it's going to have to metaphorically move its head to keep the sun in line with it at the counter rate that it's claimed you're turning whilst attached to it, and the equatorial mount is also attached. So you are wrong, but that's just how life goes sometimes.
Okay, I'll accept it. I understand what you mean. I understand that claim. I understand the claim that goes behind it. And I'll accept this. I'm going to look into it, and I think I might be wrong. I'll look at it again, but I was pretty sure that the two of them moving in opposite directions is going to make more than 15 degrees.
Yeah, cool. I get it. But hopefully now my example with something that's got the Earth turning underneath it, as is claimed, but doesn't happen because it would shorten flight times, that wouldn't need to move its head. So that's obviously made clear. But notice the level of humility difference. Flat Earther gives a detailed explanation, concedes he's maybe incorrect at the end, maybe a little bit weaselly, but ultimately concedes, no, I'm going to drop this. Not reassert it 17 more times. Notice the difference.
Yeah, not.
What?
Yeah, you don't go. Not understand. You do not understand.
No, I'm not going to keep pushing it because I understand how it works. I understand what Nathan is saying to me. So I'm not going to keep on pushing it and saying, no, I'm right. I'm going to look at it again. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's that.
Fair enough. In the meantime, though, anybody on the Discord panel want to explain how equatorial mounts prove we're spinning? Any takers? Or, I mean, obviously, this is another alternative. You could assume that that's actually our rhetoric, and you can feel free to debunk that. So anyone on the G+ panel or Discord server want to debunk what we've just been talking about? That would be useful too.
I just want someone to try to explain to us what reference frames have been broken.
Feel free. Just before you do, though, any takers from Discord? Go on.
I would like to address a different Coriolis claim, but no, I don't want to deal with that.
No, I don't blame you. Go ahead, Blacksword, and then we'll come to you, John, if we've got time.
Well, I did another demonstration for the Globers with actual Coriolis, this time with a fan. I actually mounted a camera on the fan, ceiling fan, and I mounted a camera on a car on the table. And I spun the fan. And then I moved the car, and you could actually see Coriolis. Now they're claiming it's not Coriolis. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's because they don't know. I can believe it, because they don't know what Coriolis effect is. So, from your fan, I saw that video, good video. From the fan, what is it, below the car, whatever it is, what is it?
That's just on a coffee table.
Coffee table. Well, the coffee table seems to be coming towards the perspective of the fan. Now, obviously, the table's not moving, it's the fan moving. Well, that's Coriolis deflection. That is, in essence, what Coriolis effect is. You observing something from a spinning reference frame. The reason it's called non-inertial is because that particular vantage point doesn't have any inertia. You're attached to the thing that's spinning, therefore you don't have any inertia, and the apparent deflection is the thing seeming to do something it isn't. Well, that's called the inertial reference frame because it's giving you an apparent deflection. So you see something apparently deviate? Well, no. It's a stationary coffee table seeming to drift because it's you seeing it from a spinning fan above it. Well, that's Coriolis deviation. But they say, no, that's not Coriolis. It's like, yeah, it is. But you're clearly idiots. None of you know what Coriolis effect is, as demonstrated by Simon Dan. If you knew what Coriolis effect was, would you claim that you and your reference frames have been ruined? Would you be so stupid as to debunk the thing you're claiming if you knew what it was? Obviously they don't know what it was, or they wouldn't go around debunking their own bloody claims like Dan's done. Any more for any more?
My favorite part of that little video was you adding Smoking the Grass Tyson, talking about how I'm watching the game and I did a quick calculation and yeah, Coriolis.
Mind blown.
Like, really, bro? You just did a quick calculation about how the Earth spun underneath that football to just happen to get into that field goal. Wow.
And how much reference frames would that need?
More than one.
Well, Chocolate, you gave me the good segue here. So They do understand what Coriolis is. They just can't go there. But Neil deGrasse went there, and he explained what it actually was if the Earth was turning. He referenced 2 reference frames, but these guys can't go there.
And that relates to what we were talking about before, how these guys can individually just throw into the narrative, right? Well, that's what he did. Mr. Smoking the Grass, sitting back watching his football game, can easily throw into his bullshit narrative by saying, look, I did a quick calculation while watching this football game, and look, they made that field goal because of the Earth's rotation. Wow.
And he would be correct if the Earth was turning.
Yeah.
But if the Earth was turning, then flights from east to west would be shorter too.
Exactly. It's a claim that requires 2 reference frames. And according to Simandan, you and your reference frames have been ruined. And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for tuning in, hopefully smashing the super chat. No, that's wrong. Hopefully a massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of you who tuned in on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Of course, a massive thank you to today's Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!